Good afternoon, and welcome to the sunset safari here at WildEarth TV. You are extremely welcome, and I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are feeling good and you have something pleasant to drink or eat in front of you, and that you're going to settle in and watch us for the next 3 hours as we take you through the wilds of the Kruger National Park and a small section on the western side of it called Djuma, and off to the west of that a section called Arathusa. We're on about 1,500 hectares in an unfenced, untrammeled 3.5 million hectare Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park. It's all rather complicated with all the names, but all you have to know is that the animals are free rein to move in 3.5 million hectares of wildlife land, and we are here on the very western edges in one of the prime spots, and that spot is called Djuma. You are on a live safari. In case you didn't know, this is not edited. It is receiving you are receiving this 12 seconds after I say it, and so you are virtually live. Nothing I can say can be filtered to you, and that is possibly not a good thing for you, and I certainly feel a certain sense of danger when I consider it myself. Now, we are, as I say, in the low veld of South Africa. Off to the far east we have the Rhyolite Mountains of the Lebombo. Just down from them, coming westwards, we've got the basalt plains, and further from towards us here it's mainly granite underneath these sandy soils, and a bit of gabbro, which is a sort of transformative rock. I've forgotten the exact term of it. It's all igneous and it's all very ancient. And off to the far west, and I'm not sure if VM can show it or not, there are some conical hills, and they go off in the foothills. Now you can't see them apparently, sorry about that, but they go off towards the Drakensberg, the mighty Ukahlamba Drakensberg Mountains, which go 1,000 kilometers down the escarpment of South Africa. My name is James Hendry. I am going to be your guide for the rest of the afternoon, provided I can get out of this tree without killing myself. And on camera today we have Vium, who is dressed in summer garb because it is a very pleasant, probably 26 or 27 degrees Celsius. And in the control room we have the red hair of Kirsty and the blonde of Nikki, and they will be in the control room this afternoon. On the other vehicle we have the Men's Health model Scott Dyson, and he is being filmed by the somewhat insane Andrew Joe Francis, and we will be responsible for entertaining you, I hope, for the next 3 hours. My plan today is to head a little bit off to the west to try and find Sindile, a young 1-year-old leopard cub who has been providing us with a huge amount of entertainment for the last few days. In fact, he's into day 7 of being on his own. His mother, some would say a somewhat negligent mother, I would being one of them, is off in the far, far west. She's gone 2 properties over and was seen today following the Anderson male, who is mating with what is known as the Impala female from Londolozi. So she's 2 farms west and 1 farm to the south of us. She's a long way from Sindile and unlikely to come back today. Sindile, on the other hand, has managed to make himself a number of very fine kills, we think. His belly is full, his coat is shiny, and he seems to be in fine fettle. Now, I'm going to attempt to dismount from this somewhat rickety knobthorn tree. And should I fall, Viam has been doing first aid training today, so he is going to help me if I do myself an injury. Now, watch this for elegance. Viam, are you watching? Huh?
Well done, James.
Thank you so much. God. You know, as a presenter, our egos are very fragile, and we do need constant compliments, or we tend to go into our shells. Right, on we go. I feel quite relieved about that. Right, now Sindile was found not too far from here, and we're going to pop around to where he was this morning. If he has moved on, which is quite possible because he has been hunting quite a lot, we will probably go off on foot and see if we can find him and then drive in afterwards. Please remember, this is, as I say, a live safari, relatively, in that you are 12 seconds behind us, but you are welcome to send through questions and comments, #SafariLive, or questions@wildearth.tv if you are on the email. And just remember, tomorrow we are changing times. We are going half an hour earlier here, so we'll start at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then half an hour later in the evening we'll start at 3:30. And Patty in Canada was asking, what does that mean for them with Eastern time in North America? Well, that means, Patty, that you will start the dawn safari at 12 a.m., so at midnight, and the sunset safari, which is what we're on now, at 9:30 a.m. in the morning. Obviously it's in the morning because it's a.m., right? So Patty, that's where we are tomorrow. Thank you, Dennis in Lakeville. Thank you, I think. You say that I am now no longer the dwarf mongoose, but because of my tree climbing skills, I am the blue-headed tree agama. Dennis, is that a compliment? So Sindile was just in here today, and in the past week, during which he's been alone, he's been wandering about in this area, probably in an area no larger than 2 hectares. So about 4 rugby fields or 4 NFL football fields if you happen to be in North America. Not much bigger than that, and he seems to have found enough to eat, franklins and dwarf mongoose, and we think he took a steenbok. I know he was stalking one today and he failed, but there was a substantial drag mark yesterday that Scott found, and we think that he possibly killed a steenbok. Will you excuse me 1 second? I just need to quickly address Stefan on the radio. Go ahead. Yeah, affirmative. we just have to leave this radio for Steph, who is on foot. It's at the junction, well, it's 100 meters from the John Gurry Main, 100 meters from the junction with Triple M. Affirmative. Right, we are going in here. Sindile was somewhere in these guarri bushes. Now, yesterday, when we found him on foot, in fact, Viam and I and Tara Dales, who came on a rare tracking expedition with us yesterday, we found him on foot, and he just popped his head up. And so what we need to look for here is just the odd spot and perhaps the telltale roundness of his ears. I don't think he would have moved too far from this morning, but like I say, he was hunting. So we'll just do a quick loop through here. Your heads. Where are you, young Sindile?
Nyala.
There's a Nyala.
Yeah.
Right, so that is not normally an excellent sign that there's a leopard around. I'll just show you this Nyala. Well, Viam will show him to you. Is that okay, Viam?
Hello.
And I'm just going to have a listen and a look around to see if I can see the ears sticking up from somewhere. Sindile, of course, also loves termite mounds, of which there are very few where we are currently sitting. That is a male Nyala, one of the most beautiful antelope that we find out here. Females are a rich sort of russet red, and the males obviously that charcoal browny grey. Beautiful. So I can't see young Sindile at the moment. We're going to drive a little bit through here, and then we might have to leave you and go off on foot for a while. think I'm looking at a log, to be honest. But I've spotted something. It may well be just a log. It is in fact a log. Right. Sorry about that. While we're driving around searching for this little fellow who has provided us with so much joy over the last week, Insomniac, I think perhaps your question is a very good one. You want to know, do I think Shadow will ever come back to Sindile, or will she just sort of leave him? Insomniac, I'm starting to wonder that myself. She's so far away from him now, still chasing the males, that I don't know if there isn't something a bit odd with her physiology that is making her come into estrus more frequently than would normally happen. So I don't know, Insomniac. I don't know if she's going to come back. He is starting to range a little bit more widely now than he did before, so I'm really not sure. But what I can say is that I think as long as he stays in his father's territory, as long as he stays in Tingana's territory, I think he'll be okay, because he's managing to kill on his own. And he might join up with Shadow again if she has more cubs, and they may share kills, but the important thing is that he's managing to look after himself on his own right now. And I don't think that that's to be sneezed at. And perhaps he'll be absolutely fine if she never comes back. His danger will be if he wanders into another male's territory, and if that male gets wind of him, he will be in trouble. But clearly he hasn't had to be taught to do too much hunting. He's clearly managed to do quite a lot of it on his own. I'm just going to drive around on the road and just check that his tracks haven't crossed before we do too much off the road. Try not to run over the radio I just dropped here. It is a very good question, Insomniac, and one which we will only answer in a little while. Right, I think rather than bore you with the search, we're going to probably go off on foot and see if we can find Sindile. And while we're doing that, let's go across to Scott, see what his plans are for the afternoon, and I will see you in just a little while, hopefully with a little spotted cat or two. See you now.
Hello everyone, and welcome on board with myself, Scott, and I'm teamed up with Andrew on camera this afternoon. It's a beautiful day. This morning it was cloudy, but at about midday that started to change, and we've basically got clear skies, but it is a little bit hazy, typical for this time of the year. And really looking forward to this afternoon's safari with all of you. Now, I wasn't out this morning. I slept in and enjoyed the morning off, but thankfully Brent and James filled me in on all that happened last night. Oh, Andrew, go for it quick. No, the eagle. We went for different things.
Oh, that's impossible.
Earlier on we saw a batelier flying alongside us, and I just assumed that Andrew would have continued keeping his eye on it, but he found another bird that he zoomed into in the bush. I didn't even see it. But isn't this beautiful? It's one of my favorite things to watch. And on a hot day like this, it makes for very easy and efficient flying for the birds of prey. And as you'll notice, no flapping is required, and it's probably traveling anywhere between 30 and 50 miles an hour, using very little or no energy at all. Great. Well, like I said, it's one of my favorite things to share with you, that of the predatory birds soaring up above us. And it's always a bit tricky. As you saw, it was just a tiny speck in the distance, yet when we first saw it, it was just above us. So it gives you a good idea of how quickly they travel. As I was saying though beforehand, thankfully James and Brent filled me in on all the news from last night, a lot of which was simply left by the animals' footprints in the sand. And some of those footprints were of the Nkahuma pride of lions. There's 7 lions within that pride, and we haven't seen them for quite a while now. I can't remember when last we actually saw them, probably 5 or 6 days ago. And they've been further to the west of us on Arathusa and Sibambili, but they did cross back through a little corner of Djuma last night and straight into one of our northern neighbors, Buffelshoek, but nobody could find them on Buffelshoek this morning. So the good news is that there is a chance that they may still be close to our northern boundary, and who knows, maybe even during the course of today, especially when it was a lot cooler and cloudy earlier on, they could well have crossed south back to Djuma. So that's what I'm going to go and double check on our northern boundary, and thereafter I'm not sure what exactly we will do. I'm going to take a bit of a chance here. I've seen a woodpecker fly up into this tree. It could well fly off by the time we get into position, but there it goes. It flew off, but not too far, so we're going to continue trying to get closer to it. They're such pretty birds. We don't very often get to share them with you. There's a big dead knobthorn tree up to the left of us, and that's where we need to take a closer look. Just going to get the sunder. Oh no, 1 flew off, but I think there could have actually been 2 in here. Andrew, zoom in and maybe we'll see one hopping in and amongst those knobbly branches. And this was a great opportunity to show you exactly why this tree is called the knobthorn acacia. It's a very prominent acacia in this part of South Africa, and you will notice the very prominent knobs which protrude from the bark. Sadly, no woodpecker foraging amongst them. But this is the knobbly knobthorn acacia tree. This one's completely dead. It hasn't just lost its leaves during the winter months like a lot of the trees that may appear dead now. And sadly, it's difficult to show you because the base of the tree is covered by these bright green guarri bushes, but it would have had its bark stripped off by elephants and therefore cutting off the transport system between the roots and the leaves, therefore causing a plant to die. And you only have to ring bark a tree, therefore around the circumference of the tree. Just remove, even if it's just a centimeter around the circumference, that's all you need to do to kill a tree. So a useful trick to know, especially if there's any alien trees that you may be wanting to get rid of. You don't need poison or anything like that. All you need to do is ring bark them. We might get a second chance. The woodpecker just flew up and landed in another acacia tree. It's not nearly as knobbly as the last one. Andrew is in the right spot, so keep watching closely and hopefully it's going to there it goes. A little bit further up, Andrew, tiny bit. I just got a glimpse of it. It's hiding behind a thick vertical branch in the middle. Oh, there, a little bit on the right there. Andrew's got it. Oh, as you can see, it's not going to be easy to identify. We're only getting very brief glimpses of it. And it's gone into such a thick part of the tree. Oh, this is torture. It's teasing us. Well, judging by its size, it looks like it could have been a bearded woodpecker, but because we haven't got to show you a very good view of them in the flesh, what I'm going to do is just pull out the book quickly, and you'll get an idea of what I was hoping to show you. All of them are pretty, but the one at the bottom right is the female bearded woodpecker, and judging by the size, and I saw a lot of dark stripes on its head, I think it was her. But they all look fairly similar, the four that you get in this area. And hopefully next time we'll be able to get you a bit of a closer look at them. Well, I hope James has some luck finding Sindile, the young male leopard that he's searching for. It sounds like Brent's had an incredible sighting of him this morning. And we are all certainly becoming very, very fond of that young leopard. Not only because we get to see him a lot, but because he has provided us with some really awesome sightings. And what a pleasure to be able to get to know this wild animal so well and spend so much time with him. Comms test. While we're on the bird hunts. Oh, they're all not wanting to play sport today, but thankfully Andrew's quick on the camera. But it would have been impossible to get you a view of that white-crowned shrike. And for those of you who are new to the show, I often recommend to new viewers to start doing bird lists, because a lot of the time out here we're not only looking at the big and prominent stars of the show, we spend a lot of time with the lesser animals that are not as well known, but still very pretty and all have their own interesting stories to tell. It was perched up beautifully with the sunlight beaming down on it. But these are the joys of being involved in a live safari. It's unscripted, unedited, and quite a lot of the time the animals will make a fool of us. I'm sure a lot of bushwalks, and you'll be glad to know that Eugene, one of our tech wizards, as well as Steph and Brian, are all back on that project and doing it this afternoon. So who knows, maybe you'll get to meet up with Steph on foot. But it's a work in progress and no guarantees there. Really fun birds to observe, the helmeted guinea fowl. notice that they've got very bright blue heads and hundreds of tiny little white speckles on their black feathers. And much like chickens, they'll feed on both seeds and worms and little insects and grubs that they can scratch up with their feet. And they've got one of my favorite alarm calls. It's very loud, and it really does sound like they are panicking for their lives. Some of you may remember the other day when I was racing to the Djuma waterhole to respond to a leopard that you guys had informed us about on the Djuma waterhole cam. The guinea fowl were going absolutely bananas in a tree, and I thought the leopard must be there, but it was a Varro's eagle owl that they were screaming at. Them and the go-away birds. Speaking of the Djuma waterhole, I'm told a lot of you are concerned about a lonely buffalo there. I sadly don't know anything about this lonely buffalo. I know there was a buffalo though that was hanging around in that general area with quite a badly wounded leg, and he wasn't looking too promising. But the one that's obviously been there today, I don't know anything about, but maybe we'll swing by there a little bit later and take a closer look. If they are alone, it is a fairly good indicator that something is wrong. Buffalo bulls will usually travel in small herds, 2 or 3, up to some like the one we see of about 40. So just the fact that he is completely alone is an indicator that he's probably not at full health, and we're probably going to start seeing a lot more sick and old animals because their weaknesses really start to become prominent as it's such a harsh time of the year. There's not much food around, and without food, any weaknesses or ailments become very quickly pronounced and potentially fatal to them. So we can expect to see a lot of full belly lion and leopard in the next 2 months or so, because their pickings are going to start getting a little bit easier. Perfect timing for young Sindile, I guess, who now has been alone for 7 days, as I'm sure James has told you. And won't it be a great kickstart for him to be able to practice on some younger, weaker animal, or older and weaker animals. I guess the major thing that you do have to remember, and as sad as it can be for any given individual who may be sick or wounded, for the greater ecosystem or for another species that may feed on that animal that dies, it's a huge blessing and an opportunity. So sadness for one animal will bring joy for another. That's usually the case, and it's always worth remembering that. Okay, very interesting. I've just got some intel through on the lonely buffalo, and it's from Pretty Nightmare. Hello, and thanks for sending this through. Apparently the buffalo has been there all night and all day and has hardly moved a muscle. So that in itself is certainly not a good sign, and it will be interesting to see what plays out. What I might do is try and stop here and show you some tracks of an animal whose feet we seldom get to show you. So I'm just going to jump out the vehicle quickly. Can you get to this one here, Andrew?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So what we're looking for here is 4 toes of on a very large animal. This is the circumference of the track, so a very, very big track. And if you look closely, you'll see the 1 toe, 2nd toe, 3rd toe, 4th toe. So this is the footprint of a hippopotamus. The only other animal that you may get confused with is the rhinoceros, and it's got a very similar sized footprint, but the only difference is that the rhino will have 3 clear toes, and they're not as small and pointy as these. So I'll just use this existing track to make you a rhino track. So that's more typical of a rhino's track. Not perfect, but it does give you an idea. Heading, which houses about 20 hippo at the moment, but they'll come on to Juma at night to feed. And at this time of the year, just like all the herbivores, times are tough for them, so they'll have to travel very large distances every night in order to get food. Now don't be alarmed, we are going through a slightly wobbly signal area, so if the picture shakes or you get rushed across to James, don't be surprised. Now, this is quite a good place to stop and show you how certain trees will be fed on, because they've got tasty leaves, and usually those trees are armed with lots of thorns, and they also have very small leaves, so they've evolved to not have a big target to consume and also a tricky target to consume because of all of the thorns. And I want to ask Andrew just to slowly zoom across to some acacia trees on our left. As he pans across to them, you'll notice a lot of the other trees around them have got quite big green leaves, but they have got very little leaves at the moment. So it's a combination of it being winter and also the animals consuming whatever few leaves were still there. And we have just got a question through from Gerry, and he's interested to know, since no animals browse on the guarri plants, how are their numbers kept in check so that they don't overpopulate this area? And it's a good question, Gerry. But I must say before I answer that, no, it's not completely true that no animals will eat them. They just aren't frequently fed on, and we have seen elephants in the last few days feeding on them. Not very much, and not enough to dent their population, but a few animals will browse on them from time to time, especially now, like I said, when things are getting a little bit desperate during this end of winter drought. But the reason why I don't think we have to worry about them overpopulating is that naturally they only grow in certain areas which are conducive to their specific needs, often up on crests and dry areas like this, and therefore habitat alone and terrain alone will determine where a lot of trees can and can't grow. They are also often used by buffalo to polish up their horns, so they do get broken by buffalo. Elephants will break them to show strength and size. So they are kind of kept in check, but not nearly as much as all of the other trees. That's completely true.
James!
Yeah?
Crash cut! And I'm not joking. Are you joking?
Are you joking?
Really?
Oh, hello everybody. I was somewhat more prepared for this than I was the last time, so I'm slightly less out of breath than I was, and we're live. No luck on Sindile, I'm afraid. We are doing our best to find him in here. I found one track just inside there heading this way. Now what we've done is we've come around from the eastern side there. We've come around towards this area, and there was one track coming this way, and he's been going up and down so much that I just wonder whether he's in here or he's crossed the drainage line to go and look for something there. I'm not sure, but the fact that there was one track heading this way is a good sign. So while you're back on the vehicle with us, we'll just do a little loop through here and see if we can spot something. Okay, here we go. Thank you, VM, for your calm call. Getting quite fit during those crash cuts. So the track was sort of heading towards that termite mound there. Might not be a bad place to start again. Please excuse the odd crunching noise. Put your heads, everybody. Don't take a sip of your drink just yet. So the track was just in here.
There he is, right there.
Where?
Like 2 o'clock?
You mean right next to where his track was?
Yes.
That is marvelous. VM has spotted him. VM, point the camera to him. I don't know where he is. I can't see him.
See him now?
I can't see anything. Can you still see him?
Yes.
Everybody, can you see him? Oh, no. I still can't see him. Oh, there he is. Well spotted, Vium. I must have been... I must have been maybe 10 meters from that when Vium called me back. Purely by chance. I found the track by chance. So it wasn't like I was tracking him to where he is now. Well spotted, Vium. Right, in we go. That is marvellous news. I was beginning to get a little nervous that Sindile had absconded to set up a territory somewhere else without us. But there he is. Magnificent little fellow that he is. Well done, VM. Hello, little boy. How's it going? Is that alright for you?
Yeah, but
Phew! Let us just soak up the atmosphere for a little while and enjoy the sight of this completely magnificent animal. He has now gone from almost being my favorite to definitely being my favorite. Look at him. There is something behind those eyes, though, that will always be wild. So while we look at him, and especially when he is lying like a Labrador next to the winter fire, when he looks up at you, those eyes have definitely got, and will always have, an element of the completely wild. And they say that, you know, people who have tried to raise leopards from cubs, say orphaned leopards, that they never ever lose that very wild streak. So while they will become completely accustomed to human beings if you raise them from cubs, they never lose that very wild streak. And that, of course, as they get older, especially the males, becomes more and more pronounced. And you can almost see it in the expression on their faces. You never sit like this with Tingana or Mvula or Anderson or any of the other big males and get the same feeling from them. I get a real sense of from Sindile, I guess I get a sense of peace, relaxation, but I don't ever get the same feeling from those big territorial males. So he will change. I'm just trying to see if I think he's eaten or if he's looking a little bit skinny. So I'm looking at his belly. I think it looked pretty full. It's also very furry, and certainly we're at a chillier afternoon. I might like to get out and go and snuggle up to his belly there. And Tula, you've heard me calling him Sindile. You've also heard me say that he is now officially called Madiba by the Simbambili, and at least the Arethusa rangers who found him as a young cub. Apparently I jumped the gun a bit there. I heard somebody from Arethusa referring to him as Madiba, and so I assumed that that name had been given. But normally it's only given at independence. So probably when he's, well, supposedly when he's about 18 months to 2 years old. So at the moment we're still going to call him Sindile. And for those of you who are confused, it's entirely my fault. But I think we'll keep calling him little Sindile for now. I remain unconvinced that Madiba is the best name for him. But, you know, it's not up to me. I'm just going to call him in on the radio, everybody. Not Sindile, of course. I mean, I just need to announce that he is here. So please excuse me 1 second. Stations located Shadows Cub, now about 300 meters from the junction with Triple M and Gari Main. Best approach is Rebecca's now, and from the brown ivory tree you can head in a south-westerly direction. I'm talking nonsense. Correction, best approach is from Gari Main. Still, you'll get me visual. Just come from Rebecca's and head west along Gari Main. Right, that should be the administration out of the way. Now we can enjoy the sight of Sindile. And unfortunately, you're now looking at me as well, of course. Thank you, VM, for that. I think Sindile is much better looking than I am. Sorry, I'm getting asked again on the radio. Go ahead. Affirmative, Shadows Cub. Best approach, Gowrie Main. 150 meters West Junction, Rebecca's. You will get me visual from the road. Right, now that should be the end of the administration, I hope. So, unfortunately, he's not doing quite what he was this morning with young Brent. He looks quite exhausted after the exertions of his morning, but I think that after a little while he will probably get up and try and do something entertaining, not for the sake of entertainment, of course, but to maybe try and catch something to eat. Like I say, if we pull in on his belly there, Viam, I think he looks pretty full, don't you think?
Yeah, he's doing good.
No, I don't think he's, 7 days without his mother, he's doing absolutely fine. Now, we've been talking a lot about him being on his own and that he's managing to feed himself. And Paul, you want to know if he didn't venture out, would he not pick up Shadow's scent? Paul, that would depend on a number of things. First of all, it would depend on whether Shadow was marking territory or not. At the moment, I don't think she is. She might be doing a little bit of territorial marking, but she seems to be chasing the Anderson male quite voraciously. Whether she's still mating with him or not, I don't know. I think it's unlikely, given that it's 7 days since she started mating with Tingana, and a 7-day estrus period would be a very long time. So I don't think she's still mating. She might be, but I'm not sure about that. Secondly, it presumes that he wants to find his mother. Now that might sound silly, but he is not necessarily pining after his mum. I suspect that the only reason he would want to see his mother is for yes, there's an element of play that he still has with his mum, but he's now a year old, and so that's starting to dwindle. And there's an element of wanting to feed off what she kills. But the more time he spends away from her, and the more time he has to sort of kill on his own, Paul, I believe the less he will try and seek her out. And absolutely, he could try and seek her out. But in terms of scent, I think it'd be very difficult to find her at the moment. He's very exhausted. He's having a bit of a yawn. Very furry in his ears, which of course is totally normal. I suspect he will start to lose some of that thick belly coat that he's got as the summer starts to arrive. What's the date today? 27th.
I don't know. I just work here.
I think it's the... Please excuse the sardonic cameraman, everyone. I think it's the 27th or so. And that means that officially, for me anyway, spring begins in 4 days' time. Just getting a report on the radio, everybody, about some of the lions, which I can give you just now. very interesting, and just a special shout out welcome to the 9-year-old children watching in Clearwater, Florida. Thank you, Rosie and Donna, for that update. You're welcome, kids, and please send through some questions if you would like to. I hope that one day you'll be able to come and visit Africa, and perhaps some of you have already, and you'll be very lucky if you have. But please feel free to ask us any questions. You could tweet them through, possibly through your teacher would be the best option. Hashtag Safari Live or questions@wildearth.tv. And we'd be happy to try and answer any queries you have about little Sindile there, or indeed about anything to do with Africa. And the big thing for you to remember at 9 years old, of course, is that you can imagine being alone now. Imagine that you got home and your mum and dad weren't there anymore. Could you survive? Now, at 9 years old, a human being is at the cusp of being able, the cusp means on the edge or almost able to look after themselves. So you could probably find a bit of food in the kitchen, you could probably find the odd leftover in the fridge, but other than that, you would struggle to support yourself. Now, Sindile finds himself in a similar position, except he's probably the equivalent of, say, let's say a 12-year-old human being, just on the edge of becoming an adolescent or a teenager, and so starting to be able to look after himself now. And I think that's quite a nice way to look at it, everybody. Not only for the 9-year-olds in Clearwater, Florida, but for everybody. He's on the edge of sort of puberty now. And so think of him as a 12 or 13-year-old human being, and just about able to sort of understand the world enough to survive. Now, of course, in the modern world, the human being tends to hang around home for as long as possible. But in the traditional societies, obviously, once a man hits sort of 15, he would have left home, and same with ladies. In fact, they probably would have happened even younger. And that has remained in the animal kingdom. Once puberty's over, it's time to get on out and get a job. And while we look at Sindile not doing very much at all, Cameron, aged just 5 years, you want to know, have I ever been lost in the woods? Cameron, more often than I'd care to admit. One does get lost quite easily out here if there's no sun. So on a cloudy day, it's very easy to get disorientated. And that means you don't know where you are, because you don't have the sun or anything to look at to help you know which direction you're facing. And that's quite interesting, because human beings, some people are very good at not getting lost despite the sun. Some are extremely bad at it. And apparently it's got something to do with a special metal that is in the cornea or the retina of your eye that tends to pick up the magnetism of the earth. Now, Cameron, a lot of this will be a little bit over your head, I think, at 5 years old, but one day you'll understand. And so some people will be very good at finding directions. So perhaps your mum is very good at finding directions, and perhaps your dad isn't so good at it. And that might have something to do with the amount of the special metal that they have in their retinas or corneas, and that helps them to feel the earth's magnetism. And that really does help find directions. And animals, of course, usually are excellent at finding directions. Especially some of the birds that are just coming back now after their long flights away. So Cameron, while we talk about being lost, some of the birds travel thousands and thousands of miles as they come back from Asia and Europe back to South Africa. And one of the ones we saw today was a little thing called a common sandpiper, which is a very small bird that has flown thousands of miles to come back. Unfortunately, it's landed at Djuma Dam, where there is not a lot but flapping catfish. But I suppose for the sandpiper, which eats a lot of algae, it's a pretty good place to be after 2,000, or probably how many thousands? 10,000 kilometers of flying. Now, this is a very exciting occurrence. We're going to wait here with Sindile. We're not going to go anywhere from him. Steph is out on foot, testing out the bush walking equipment. So we're going to try and cross to him and see how that goes. And we'll see you in just a little while. Enjoy the walk.
Well, welcome to the bushwalk. How are things this? I bet you didn't think that we were going to get this right a day like today. A long time in the coming, and I must be happy, or I'm happy to say, welcome back. This is still part of the test that we're doing, so if we don't get it 100% right today, it's because we haven't quite got rid of all the gremlins that we have in the system, but nevertheless we are going to try. Now, if you don't know, I am Stefan Winterboer. I am a trail guide specialist, and on camera today we have got Brian, who's a specialist in his own right there, looking like a Terminator doll with his aerial in his backpack. But before we go, I just want to reintroduce the walk, the concept of the walk to everybody. Basically, we wanted to see if we could bring you the WildEarth experience foot, the same as what we do in the vehicles, but we wanted to do it on foot for you, and we wanted to do it from the middle of pieces of land, and we wanted to do it as wild as we could. And we've actually got it right, to be honest with you. It's been a few months in the practice, but we definitely have got it. But you will notice that I do carry a rifle because of us being far away from a vehicle and we are away from lodges. Essentially just a piece of safety equipment, very similar to, I suppose, a airbag in your vehicle or a car seat. You know, you don't want to have to use it, but you're glad that it's there if you do. You'll also notice that I have a white armband on. That is just regulation for trails guide, registered trails guides in the area to have, and it's just to single me out, for lack of a better word or expression, from people who are not supposed to be here. But without further ado, we've come to this area today because this time of the year, elephant love this woodland. As you see around us, it is lots of trees here, and they definitely enjoy this. Elephant on foot are exciting. And right off the cuff, Muff and Brian found a place where elephants have been enjoying the afternoon. As you can see from the trees you're just panning through now, the trees are on the western side of this little thicket. And elephants have obviously been standing in the shade here in the afternoon. And I'm standing, excuse me, where a baby elephant was lying. I'm going to bend down a little bit so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. This area here was where a young elephant slept against this termite mound. And it's a young elephant because of this grass is still standing here and there, and coming past me, it's still standing over here. So that would be elephants. And he was close to mom because mom's dung is right here. This is mom's dung, and I know that the members heard around it because they've been digging out the roots of this combretum. Let me get over to this combretum while I'm standing here. And the thing is they've excavated the roots around this combretum. They've dug with their foot, probably taking their toe and digging in with their foot, taking their trunk and pulling out the roots and eating it, breaking off the branches and eating the tree as they go along. Excuse me, the fly gave me a fright. What they've done is they've excavated it. Now, this tree will probably survive this, funnily enough. And I'm going to show you why. Mother Nature is a wonderful thing. Mother Nature's provided the perfect depression for water to, as well as dead leaves in the, at the end of winter. And it's sort of a natural compost heap. And this tree will self-compost, basically, all its dead branches. And those are the roots, the regeneration roots, that will help the tree to survive. What it really looks like it killed hot on the trail of these these elephants at the moment. We just heard some trumpeting distance. That's our mission, to try if we can get you close to some elephant. And we're going to carry tracking these guys now. So why don't you come and join us? Now, the title camera, so excuse me, it's a little shaky and from time to time. The stabilizers that is common on the vehicles, at least anyway, and for us to do all of that, that the vehicle and own job as well. Now, while we're going through the bush, we absolutely try and listen as much as what we can. And notice that I'm sticking the main part. This is an area that walk, and therefore won't as noisy for me to walk. That's the hope, right? Wind direction also plays a very important part in determining where you are. And quite often some grass crushed, give you an idea of wind direction. And see, very still afternoon, or now anyway, with the wind gusting slightly down slope with normal for the time of the day. Wind gusting down slope to relax, but nothing really should concern ourselves about, and we keep on going. Alright, while myself and I thought the audio is a bit jumpy, and I just want to, thank you for bearing us during these. While myself and Brian get into a better position to show you, I hope, some elephant, we're going to be crossing through to James, who has got something to show you in Sindile, as far as I know. So see you in a bit.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Sindile. He is still lying on the ground doing what cats do best, of course, which is what, Viam?
Snoozing.
Snoozing, precisely. And a leopard will sleep for roughly, well, probably up to 18 hours a day in some cases. This little chap is pretty energetic normally, but when I've been around him in the afternoons, this is when he likes to have his general repose, and when it gets a bit cooler, he'll perhaps move around a bit. Wasn't that wonderful to be on foot with Steph? It really is the truest and best way to experience the wilderness. So I hope we do sort out the audio issues. I'm sure we will. Eugenius is on the job, of course, and various others whose intellectual capabilities far exceed my own. And if you ever get a chance to come out here, walking safari is possibly the best way to experience Africa. To have your feet crunching on African soil and inhaling the African air in the absence of a vehicle is a primal experience, and certainly one that I really enjoy doing even now after so long being out here. So Sindile is just shaking his ears a little at the flies, which will get exponentially worse as we go towards the summertime. I seldom have seen leopards sleep this restfully, I must say. They're normally heads up and looking every so often. Maybe he feels a certain sense of comfort of having us here, and maybe he realizes that should a lion come along, one of us will get up and point frantically. There will be the odd game drive vehicle coming in throughout the course of the afternoon, and that is, of course, is not a bad thing. It's a really good thing for conservation out here to have lots of tourists coming to and fro, but it's also a testament to what this animal that we're looking at here, the leopard Panthera pardus, has done for tourism and for conservation in this area. And in case, I'll just give you a little bit of a basic history of the Sabi Sands where we find ourselves now. The Sabi Sands is 60,000 hectares on the western fringes of the Greater Kruger National Park, and it was made famous by a number of iconic safari brands, and the big three of this area, the big four or so, are Mala Mala, Londolozi, Singita, and probably Sabi Sabi. Mala Mala was the original one, just to the north of the Sand River, which is, as the crow flies, about 5 or 6 kilometers to the south of us. And then on Londolozi, a pioneer called John Varty, who ostensibly wanted to film leopards, he managed to habituate a leopard female there, which he named the mother. And from her, generations of leopards have been viewed, because she was habituated, and so her cubs became habituated, and their cubs after them, and that was in the 70s. And that ability to be able to no one else had managed to show people leopards in the same way that the pioneers at Londolozi and Mala Mala had. And once that happened, it became we realized that it was possible to show people leopards, and people, when they come out here, this is the first animal they ask to see. This magnificent spotted cat. Look at his little claws. And so that's a little bit of the history of the safari industry here in the Sabi Sands. Now, of course, it's a massive industry, and it probably employs, just the Sabi Sands, for every guest that comes in here, we probably every guest supports about, or employs about 3 or 4 people, and each of the people, local people who work on these reserves, support at home about 8 to 10 people. So you can imagine, if there are probably roughly, say, 500 beds, guest beds in the Sabi Sands, multiply that by 4 and you get to 2,000, multiply that by 8 and you get to 16,000 people supported by tourists who come ostensibly to see that animal there. Isn't that amazing? I think it's astonishing. Right, I'm just going to excuse myself on the radio. Somebody's trying to come in here. Go ahead. Just got somebody else coming in to see young Sindile, who is sat up to decide whether he wants this person or not. I do wonder what he feels. He's never alone for very long, and I wonder if he doesn't think, what on earth are these people doing around here, consistently coming to watch me sleep? A valid question. You can see how cub-like his head still is. His face is still very cub-like. It doesn't have the severity that a big male leopard has. Now, all the way from Ohio, Sarah, aged 17. I think you're from Ohio. Sarah, you'd like to know, would Sindile ever consider basically changing his diet in order to keep his strength up if he couldn't catch enough meat? Sarah, no, not really. And the reason for that is that a leopard's stomach and its digestive tract is only suited to digesting meat. And now, but meat means various things. It does mean anything from as small as a termite, all the way up to, of course, to rotting buffalo meat, which leopards will happily eat. So if he got really hungry, Sarah, he might go and find a termite mound where he could get some termites out, and those would certainly be good food for him, full of excellent fat, which would give him energy, possibly not quite enough protein, because the digestive system of the carnivores is designed to digest a diet almost exclusively of protein. So good question there, Sarah, but if he was to start, say, eating vegetables, if we were to put out a couple of carrots or apples for him, he wouldn't be able to digest them. And it's an interesting topic, because a lot of the food, you know, that we feed our dogs, our domestic dogs and cats, contains, especially the cheaper stuff, contains corn and oats and various kinds of grains that their digestive systems are simply not designed to eat. And so it's something to bear in mind next time you perhaps pop to the shops to buy some dog food. Try and make sure that it doesn't have vegetables and grain in it. Their digestive systems are just not designed to eat those things. And the easiest way of knowing the difference, not to put too fine a point on it, is often the length of the gut. So a carnivore will have a much shorter gut or intestinal system than, say, a herbivore or an omnivore. So we're omnivores, and I don't remember exactly what the length of our intestines is. Do you, Liam? I think it's about, I don't remember exactly, I think it's about 2 or 3 meters, and that's what I remember anyway. And a carnivore will have a much shorter intestine than that, probably say 1.5 meters, and a herbivore much longer. And that's because the concentration of nutrients in meat is that much higher than it is in something like grass, which is full of lignin and cellulose, which is structural material that's not very rich in nutrients. So Sarah, I hope that answers your question for you. Yes, he's not very active this afternoon. Look at him. Okay, and while Sindile is again in sweet repose, we're going to go across to Scott. We'll see what he's doing. We'll give you an update, no doubt tell you something interesting, and we'll see you a little bit later with this magnificent spotted cat of Africa.
Welcome back, everyone, and very happy to hear that you got to see Steph on the bushwalk. Pity you couldn't hear him that well, but like I said earlier, it's a work in progress, and isn't it something really wonderful to look forward to once the tech wizards fine-tune all the little bits and pieces that need to be sorted out. And not only that, obviously spending some more time with James and Sindile. While you've been away from us, you haven't missed out a great deal. Andrew and myself popped into the Juma waterhole to take a look at the sick buffalo. It was a little bit tricky because when we got there was 4 buffaloes, not just the one that's been there for 24 hours now, or nearly 24 hours. But there were 2 that were lying down, one of which did seem a little bit worse for wear. It was the one that I thought was lying higher up away from the camera, so I guess if the camera's looking at them, the one on the right and slightly further away. It had a very small wound on its back, but it seemed to have been in the healing process, so I'm not sure if that's contributed to his weakness or his state or condition. But at this time of year, it could be one of many things that are causing him his troubles. But there wasn't too much to see there, and I didn't want to get too close to him in the fear that I may disturb him. So we have continued and headed off towards Buffelshoek Waterhole to see what's going on there. And I can give you an update on the Inkahuma Pride of Lion. Their tracks were followed to quite far north of the Buffelshoek boundary with us, So it's not going to be too likely that they pop into our property this afternoon, but you do never know, and they have yet to actually be located. But their last tracks were quite some way off. Hopefully tomorrow morning we'll be able to find some of their tracks on our property. It's cooling down quite nicely now, and there's some clouds that you can see off to the left that are slowly blocking the sun. There we go, a little filter, so not completely stopping it, but giving us a little bit of protection from that warm sun. And we've stumbled upon a herd of Nyala. You may notice that this youngster's neck's a little bit ruffled up where the neck creases, and I think that's simply from its mother grooming it, or possibly it's it grooming itself. It probably can reach there. I initially thought it may be an old wound. Look at that big bushy tail. It looks like mum in front. And while we watch these Nyala disappear off into the thickets, I can answer a question from Julia. She's interested to know whether I think it's a coincidence, or if it is related, that we're seeing so much change in lion and leopard territories. And I'm a firm believer that lions will do their business and leopards will do their own business, and it will not have an impact on one another. So I think it is through complete default that we are noticing a lot of changes in the lion's dynamics in terms of territory, as well as the leopards. You must remember, leopard and lion coexist with one another, and even though they are enemies, they're not going to alter their lives hugely for one another. And I guess it's mainly, you would think that leopards would avoid areas where lions are, but that's certainly not the case, because the lions go everywhere that the leopards go. So it's more important for the leopards to understand how the lions work, understand how they are a big threat to them, and how to escape them. And the leopards do know how to do that, especially any of the adult leopards. Otherwise, they wouldn't have survived till adulthood. So, like I say, I don't think it's got to do with the lion's dynamics changing that's causing the leopards to move off, because each void that a leopard that we used to see, like Mvula, so he's created a void or moved out of this area, but it's been filled immediately by another male leopard. So where one leopard leaves, another leopard fills that gap. And therefore, I don't think you can attribute the lion's movements to the leopards. And I think we can all just consider ourselves very lucky to be a part of these interesting changes, especially with the lions. With regards to the lions, the Birmingham Coalition, who, those of you who may not have met them yet, it's 5 young male lions who are up and coming threat to the 2 remaining Matimba males who are dominant in this area. And I'm not exactly sure when the Matimba males did become dominant here, but I'm guessing it's probably about 5 years ago, maybe even longer. And therefore it's usually between 5 and 8 years that one coalition will have a dominance or reign for be in charge of that area, and only then, after their reign comes to an end, will they be thrown out. And it doesn't happen often at all. I've never been working in an area where there has been a coalition takeover. I've only worked in areas where established coalitions are operating. So what that means is that I've never got to see many lion fights or interaction between the lions, and that's something that I certainly hope to get a glimpse of and share with you over the coming months. Leopards, I guess similarly they the male leopards will also hold their dominance for also quite a long period, possibly 5 years or more, before they do get shifted out. But in the area like the Sabi Sands, where there are so many leopards, you always kind of get to see something going on, or one male fighting with another, but lions not nearly as much. So we will be at the Buffelshoek waterhole shortly, and I wonder what's going to be there. I'm hoping we're going to have some animals drinking. I know when Craig arrived here this time yesterday afternoon, he was pleasantly surprised, and he found Makombo for us, a young male leopard, son of an Nkayeni. I doubt he'll be back there, but wouldn't it be great if he is? What I will be able to show you is exactly where he was lying up on a kind of peninsula that juts out from the northern parts of the dam. And sadly, as we were arriving into the site, and he got up and moved off from there, so we couldn't show him to you on that little peninsula. Okay, now what you're about to see is very interesting. Take a look at what this Nyala is doing. Oh no, carry on. There we go, it was just finding a smaller piece of bone to nibble on. And at this dry time of the year, like I said, a lot of the animals will have to be resourceful, and that one was, before we got here, chewing on bone. So looking in an abnormal area for a herbivore to be acquiring its minerals and nutrients, and obviously it's going to be looking for some calcium within these bones. Even though they're very dry, they will still provide the Nyala and other herbivores like giraffe, impala, kudu. Lots of the herbivores will chew on bone, but I have seen a Nyala and giraffe doing it more than most other species. And these are the same antelope that we got a look at a little bit earlier. Not the same herd, but the same species. And there's quite a few of them around at the moment, so maybe it's just easier to see them in the winter months when it's not as thick. We've just got some interesting feedback through from Dennis, and thanks very much for sending this through. He said that a lot of the deer, elk and moose where he lives will actually give birth to twins quite often, and he's wondering if any of the antelope in this area will be prone to the same. And no, I've very seldom seen or heard of any of the antelope in this area giving birth to twins. So it is interesting that the deer and elk and moose do that. The only animals that will give birth, or herbivores that will give birth to multiple offspring that I can think of offhand, are warthog. They'll give birth to about 3 or 4 piglets. But other than that, twins are very rarely documented out here. waterholes just up ahead now. Yesterday, along with the leopard, there was a large herd of buffalo bulls, and it looks like they could be here again now. Okay. Oh, here they are. The leopard was lying up just on that peninsula you can see, which is just up there. So he was lying just up there before he moved off, and then you got the first glimpse of him thereafter. And typical behavior we're witnessing now. Very sleepy, relaxed, chewing the cud with, at the moment, not too many concerns, it appears. They've got their oxpeckers doing a great job in ridding them of parasites. But for now it looks like even the oxpeckers are taking a break and using some time to sort out their plumage. I wonder when we're going to see our next breeding herd of buffalo. We went through a period of about a month when there were quite a few herds moving through the property. But it has been quite some time since that's happened. Okay, folks, well, we're going to send you across to Steph quickly because he's got himself into an interesting situation. Enjoy. Okay.
Well, we've managed to find those elephant that we were looking for. Myself and Brian were tracking a buffalo, funny enough, and we came over this termite mound that I'm on, and right over my shoulder is this elephant that you can see in the background over there. We're quite close, about 50 meters away from that elephant. There are other elephants in the area. And elephant herds on foot are a different story to elephant herds in the vehicle. They're probably the most dangerous thing to approach out here on foot. Everything else around here, from lion, you'd expect lion to be more dangerous, or the big elephant to be more dangerous. But a mommy in protecting her babies definitely is one of those things that I'm the most nervous of. So what myself and Brian have done is we've come using the cover of this termite mound to keep us hidden for as much as we can. I'm hiding behind this bush, Brian is as well, and we're keeping a very, very good eye on the wind direction. Every so often just taking some crushed grass and letting it go down. The breeze is blowing us onto those elephants. They haven't become aware of us actually, but it's not the safest place to be where we are, where we're in a wind position from those elephants. What we want to try to do is be in a downwind position or aside from them. They don't seem to be moving very fast, they just feed. You can see there's one coming out of the grass there. So, that's elephant on foot, and the breeze has picked up a bit. Myself and Brian have been moving obliquely on this elephant right now so that we can get in a downwind position. And while we do that, we are going to link back to James, and we'll catch up in a little bit. Thanks.
Well, isn't it wonderful that you got to see some elephants on foot with Steph? I'm sure a lot of your hearts are racing, but probably not as much as Steph, and probably a lot less than Brian's, the cameraman, because he spent a lot less time on foot in the bush than Steph. Great news though, and so happy that you got to see that. We haven't left these old buffalo bulls. They're still relaxing here, and we're relaxing with them. Maybe Andrew can... Oh, no. There was a fork-tailed drongo that you may have seen skimming across the water, having a bath and a drink at the same time, but it stopped before Andrew got a chance to get it, but it is up there, and let's see if it doesn't take another bath. Some of you may remember the sighting of the juvenile woodlands kingfisher that was actually plopping itself down into the water and floating there like a duck for a few seconds before taking off again. It was on a very hot summer's afternoon, and very unique behavior, because I'd never seen a bird actually landing and holding its wings out in the water to keep itself afloat. They are obviously buoyant, but it was a really fun sighting. Between wagging their tails, their ears, and chewing the cud, they're all kind of copying one another and what they're doing. And it doesn't matter where you look, they all appear to be all on the same wavelength. Those are two young oxpeckers that you saw there, because they still have grey beaks. Oh, here's a big old boy. Look at his face. Sure, and his horns. I'm sure he could tell us a few stories. Is that a wound on his chin there? It looks like it. Seems to have healed though. And hard to say what would have caused it. I think a lot of injuries that these animals get, especially their tears in their ears or when they're running through the bush away from lions. This one's using its horn as a pillow, which is not uncommon for the buff. Okay, well, it's always great to stop and listen to the surrounding bush around you, and we've been here for quite some time and haven't heard any major updates. Now you can hear the oxpeckers all taking off. But I think we're going to continue and see if we can't find some more action elsewhere. You'll be glad to hear that our friend Sindile, the young male leopard, has slowly started to show some signs of life. So we're going to send you across there for an update. Enjoy, and we'll see you all a little bit later.
Hello everybody, you find us... Well, he's not, we're trying to move with him. He just got up and decided to try and find himself something to eat, I think. He's going to come past the front of us here now, and I do hope he's not going to go too much into this hellishly thick bush in front of us. You see him there?
No.
Okay, I'm going to sneak a little bit further forward. There, I can see him. Horrible, horrible noise. Sorry about that. Here he comes. Hello, boyo. Can we see him, Vim?
A little bit.
I'm not going to move because I think he's walking down this little game path and I don't want to block his way if that is what he wants to do. So please excuse the rather poor sight of him that we have now. But what you can see, oh no you can't. I can see it because I'm slightly further forward than you are, is the lovely sun starting to sparkle in his eyes. There you can see it. Look at that. No, he's going to sleep. Let's just sneak a little bit forward. Oh, that's beautiful. Is that right, Viam? There he is. I'll say I haven't seen him for 2 days, and well, 1 day. 2 days I haven't seen him live, and if I don't get my Sindile fix every day, I start to feel quite resentful. While he's walking along there in semi-contentment, Susan in Indiana, you want to know if the big cats purr like your domestic cat does. Susan, the big cats, like lions, leopards and tigers, which belong to the genus Panthera, don't have the vocal apparatus to purr. So no, they don't purr. But the one big cat that does, and very loudly and obviously, is a cheetah. They make a very loud purring noise, and it's actually quite funny when they do it. It sounds, if you don't know what it is, it sounds a little bit like a growl, but it is a very strident sort of sawing purring that the cheetah makes. These cats have a different vocal apparatus, so they can't quite do it. Oh, the light in that little glade in which he's sitting is so beautiful, although it's not ideally placed for us. Yeah, I shall attempt to move this rather unstealthy car. Sorry, this is not the best view in the world. Just following on from the discussion we had about the history of the Sabi Sands, he spotted something now. Let's just watch what he does. He's in a stalk now. He's definitely having a little bit of a stalk. Go backwards. Get back to what I was going to say just now in relation to Jennifer's question about whether or not viewing leopards in other areas other than the Sabi Sands is frustrating. Jennifer, it can be, but there are lots of places, especially in Botswana, where leopard viewing is excellent nowadays, and so most safari places have cottoned on to how to habituate animals to safaris, and so no, there are lots of places where you can see leopards almost as well as you can here. The concentration of leopards here in the Sabi Sands is pretty high though, and so this is a particularly good spot to watch them. Okay, I'm going to try and go through here. Watch your head. Watch your heads, everybody. Mind your coffee cups. Lift them up. Viam's foot is outstretched in an attempt to avoid being beheaded. There's the leopard. He is definitely stalking something. I don't know what it is. I'm going to try and get around him a bit. through what can only be described as the windy, impenetrable guarri thicket. Thankfully, the guarri bush is not an endangered species. There he is. Sorry, Ben, I'll try and get a bit closer view. Watch out. Hello, little fella. I don't know what he was stalking or what he saw through there. But you can hear the robin calling. Can you hear the robin? Beautiful. A stunning afternoon this is, and he's on the edges of a tambuti glade. And the tambuti just always seem to leave a beautiful golden color. So close now. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. There's a class of kids called Jackie's class watching somewhere in Illinois, long way from Africa. Welcome, kids. And it's your first time with us, so you're even more welcome than you might have been otherwise. And you'd like to know a little bit about Sindile and where he comes from. Sindile is about a year old, and his mum is a slightly neglectful female called Shadow. She's off trying to make him some siblings off to the west of us, and here's basically what he's doing now is he's trying to look for something to eat. But because he's a young leopard, he's also does quite a lot of playing on his own. He doesn't have any brothers or sisters of his own age, and so he does do some playing around on his own, and that's basically what he's doing now, as well as trying to stalk one or two things maybe to eat. So he won't go very far from here, kids, because he is waiting for his mum, basically, who's gone off, and normally she'll come back and she'll make a kill and call him and come back and take him to the kill so that he can eat. But he's almost old enough to do that on his own. Now you can just see he's just waking up, and he's starting to get quite playful. He's playing with the flies, trying to catch them, yawning, wagging his tail, and he'll get up and move around quite a lot. He's just laying down in a pile of elephant dung, which is not as unpleasant as it might sound. Elephant dung is actually very fragrant, I find. Can you hear that robin calling? So lovely. We were just talking about purring, and that it sometimes sounds like growling in cheetahs. And Chris, you want to know if we are close enough to perhaps hear if his stomach growls. Not right now, I don't think, not unless he was ravenous to the point of death. But certainly, I don't know, I'm not sure if I've ever heard a leopard's stomach growl. Have you, Viam?
No.
No, I haven't. Thank you for that. I haven't heard a leopard's stomach growl. And Lindsay, you want to know when the last time he ate was. We don't know, Lindsay, exactly. But we do know that he made a kill yesterday evening, not yesterday evening, 2 evenings ago, and that he dragged it across the road. We think it was possibly a steenbok, and that it was then stolen by hyenas. But Lindsay, what we do know is that we have seen him make the odd small kill, and we also know that his belly is not thin. Now remember with the cats that when their bellies are thin, that's when they're hungry. Because they don't lay down fat, it's obvious, it's easy to tell when they're hungry because they have very skinny stomachs. And then if nutritional stress gets even worse, their hips will start to show. Now he's been alone for a week, his hips are not showing, and his belly looks pretty full to me. It certainly hasn't got very skinny while he's been on his own here. So I think he's making the odd small kill. Certainly seems to have killed something as large as a steenbok 2 nights ago, although he got within 3 meters this morning with Brent, and Brent was convinced he was going to kill, and for some reason he just didn't. The steenbok was faced away from him, digging in the ground looking for bits and bulbs and rhizomes and things to eat, and Sindile failed to push home the advantage. We don't really know why. Perhaps his mum would teach him those sorts of things, but normally these leopards are so clever that they learn to do that on their own. It's the sound of a grey go-away bird in the distance to the left of Sindile going, "Where? Where? Where?" Have something in common with one of our viewers, Stephanie from Switzerland. You're saying, can I identify which robin it is that's calling? Stephanie, it's the white-browed scrub robin that's calling. They often call this time of the day, and especially as we're going towards spring, so they will call a bit more. The white-browed scrub robin. Beautiful call. There are actually a few of them. There's the one that you can hear. There's one behind us. There's also a flycatcher calling from the Tambweti Grove just over there. What else have we got? There's a southern black tit calling just now. Bzz, 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 bzz. And all around the bush is sort of coming alive now, a bit like the dawn chorus. There is a bit of a dusk chorus that takes place, especially on an afternoon like this. And off there to the sun you can see, obviously, that's the big yellow thing at the middle of your screen. That's the sun. It's sinking into what looks like a fairly moisture-laden horizon. Now, I don't think there's going to be any rain. In fact, I'm very sure there won't be. But there is a bit of cloud that is typical of the early springtime building over the Drakensberg, and that's why the sun is that kind of orange honey color rather than the sort of burnt out white that it would be normally at this time of the day. Go ahead, Lex. Just excuse me 1 second, everybody. I'm just going to get Lex into the sighting. Go ahead, Lex. Yes, affirmative. I'll give you a little whistle. You can just come in here. Try and come to the western side of me. Okay, so Grace in Texas, I think you are. You're coming to the Kruger next week on Monday. Well, that is extremely exciting. I hope you have the best possible time, and you would like to know, do leopards climb, or would this leopard climb a tree if he felt threatened because his mum isn't here? Grace, he would absolutely do that. He would go straight up a tree if a lion came along, and so would any leopard. That is, whether they're adult or young, the best form of defense is to get up a tree and away from something that might attack them. If it's lions, they can obviously climb into smaller trees. I have seen lions chase leopards up trees, but they can obviously get onto much smaller branches, the leopards can. And then if it's hyenas or wild dogs that threaten them, getting up a tree presents the best possible way to get away from any threat that they might present. So Grace, I really do hope you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday in the Kruger. Long way from Dallas, but please enjoy it. Good afternoon.
How are you, Jack?
Good, how are you?
Good, man.
Can you see anything from the...
I can't, but they can.
Okay. He has just started to get sort of mobile, so I think he's probably going to move around.
How long has he been here now?
Right here.
In this area?
7 days.
Is it?
Yeah.
Maybe it's over for him.
Well, we think he killed a steenbok the other day. I mean, there was drag marks of it. I think it was pinched, but yeah, he seems to be eating.
So his mother...
She's mating on Ottawa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, who knows? So that's Lex, everybody. Lex is probably a guide of about 30 years experience. Fantastic guide, and one of the pioneers of the Sabi Sands. Wrote a wonderful book called The Leopards of Londolozi, and if you can get hold of it, it tells the story of the mother leopard I told you about, and all about her offspring that spawned this incredible industry. You can also hear some batises now calling, going, and that is a kind of alarm call. I think they've probably spotted him. And what's interesting is that when we do hear that and we're tracking, often what happens is we rush to where the birds are. Now those birds are probably 60 meters away from Sindile, and they've spotted him, and they're just letting each other know that there is a possible threat in the area, although a batis hardly presents something of a great meal to Sindile. A batis is about the same size as one of the big rosettes on his back. Lex can't actually see him very well because we're in such thick bush, so that's why he's moving around. So, marvellous sighting this is. I think we're going to stay with him unless the entire viewership decides that we should go somewhere else and try and find something else to watch. But I think Sindile fairly soon is probably going to get up and do a little bit more moving around, perhaps some hunting, perhaps just some playing. He's very good at playing, and he does leap onto termite mounds and onto trees and chase his own tail at times, which is wonderful to see. So I think we're going to stay right where we are for the next little while. And Mavis, your question is a good one. Would he instinctively know that another leopard posed a threat to him? Mavis, I think he would, you know. I think that there would be an instinctive reaction to another leopard that would very quickly result in a reaction that either was favorable or unfavorable. So what I mean is that if he saw another leopard, he'd get up, he'd immediately be on guard. If it was his father, I suspect he'd be fine. I think Tingana would greet him, if not with warmth, maybe with disdain, and maybe just leave him alone. If it was his mother or his grandmother, I suspect there would be a lot more, or certainly if it was his mother, there'd be affection. If it was his grandmother, there may also be a level of affection. But if it was an unrelated male, say the Anderson male came wandering across here, then what you'll find is that I think he'd stand up and look. I think that he would very quickly pick up on the body language of that male, and if it was unfavorable, he would turn around and run very fast. And of course, his greatest threat would be from someone like the Anderson male, because if the Anderson male was to come through here, Sindile would really have nowhere to hide. He's not as fast, he's not as strong, there's not a tree he couldn't climb. He could climb that the Anderson male couldn't go and get him in. So his only kind of option to get away from a threat like the Anderson male might pose would be to run and hope that the Anderson male lost interest and left him alone. I mean, we're well out of the Anderson male's territory, so it's a slightly hypothetical situation, but it's certainly possible that it could happen like that. As we all know, the greatest threat to leopards, Liam, is?
Leopards?
Correct. Well done. And especially to young male leopards is other territorial leopards. So another example would be Kunuma and Quarantine, who've gone off on their own. They're now what we call nomads, because they don't have a territory yet. They're around their mother's territory still. Kunuma, we think, more to the north, and Quarantine to the south. We had a sighting of him the other day. 3-year-old male leopards, not territorial yet. Their greatest danger is coming across the territorial male of the area where they are living. Interestingly, I think they're actually in their father's territory. I believe that Mbula was their father. Is that correct? Mbula was their father, and actually they're hanging around largely within his territory, and I don't think that's by accident. And Sindile remains within his father's territory, of course. His father is Tingana. So I'm afraid we can't really get a better view of him at this stage, because he is, well, I mean, I could push over this tree, but I think it would disturb him quite badly. So I'm just going to wait here for a little while longer and see if he doesn't move. So while we're waiting for Sindile to do a backflip or perhaps mount the high trapeze like Brian, we're going to go across to Scott, who has got not so much spots but stripes. See you later.
Welcome back, and glad you got to at least see Sindile on the move for a short while, as it really is great to see them strutting their stuff, not only sleeping. We caught this lady at a bad time, but take a close look at her belly. You'll see that it's quite protruded, or it's protruding quite heavily. And that's because there's a baby foal in there, and in the next couple of months she'll be giving birth, probably in November or December. She's got predominantly more white on her coat than black, and that certainly stands out with her. She's also got very thin black stripes on her face. I think she's a very pretty zebra. You may be wondering what that little black spot is on the inner side of her front right leg. It's called a horse chestnut, unless I'm getting myself confused here, but horses and zebra both have that same little patch of skin. It's not actually black fur, but just the smooth skin where the hooves rub up against the leg when they're lying down. And there'll be one of those little spots on both of her front legs. There we go. It's a beautiful still evening, and I'm told there are some robins calling in your sighting with James. Over here we can hear quite a few Cape turtle doves calling from time to time. As we listen to the birds, we can chat to James, who's started his bird list, and he started it on the 31st of... Oh no, I'm not sure when he started. That doesn't make sense. I'm not sure when you started, but you've already got 208 birds on your list, which is about as many as you'll see during the winter months, as there are only roughly 200 birds here in our winter and about up to 400 during the summer when a lot will migrate back. So you'll be getting a lot more then, James. And I think you said you started your bird list in October, possibly last year. But well done, and let us know if there are any specific birds that you know occur here that you'd like to add to your list, and that way we can try and hunt them down for you. Okay, well, I'm told you would like to see swallows already, James, so we can expect a few of them to be arriving shortly. Some have probably already arrived, and that I will certainly bear in mind the next time I see one. They're tricky customers to try and film and identify, but we will get our moments. We certainly spend long enough out here to do that. We've just got to wait for the right time. Well, Anita must have just tuned into the afternoon safari because she's wondering if these zebra will give birth to twins. And we actually answered a question on that earlier, Anita. Not many of the herbivores out here give birth to twins often. It can happen from time to time, and I'm sure zebra every now and then will have twins, as do elephants, but the cases of that happening are few and far between, so not likely that it will happen. I've never seen zebra twins, and just about the only herbivore that I can think about here that readily does give birth to more than one young is in the pig family, and that's the warthog. Oh, that doesn't look very tasty. Dry grass. But that's the only option for the herbivores at the moment. Everything's dry and crunchy. And I look forward to celebrating the first rains with them. It's always so much fun running out into the rain when it finally does fall, and the smell that you can remember from years gone by of that moisture hitting the dry earth is one of my favorite things about the summer months. Thereafter it gets a bit hot and sweaty, but that's just my opinion. Well, speaking of the smells of summer, Lisa has just asked, what does elephant dung smell like? Is it similar to that of a cow or a horse or a zebra? And yes, I mean fairly similar, but it will depend greatly on the time of the year that you're smelling the elephant's dung. Now, elephants will change their diet greatly during the time of the year. Not only that, also depending on the area that you're viewing them in. They do love grass, and if there's enough green grass around, elephants would probably feed mainly on that. But in a lot of parts of Africa, they don't have that privilege and therefore need to eat fruit, bark, leaves, twigs, a wide variety of different food. But I guess the one time of the year that it does really smell quite tangy and fermenting is the summer months, after they've been chewing on the fruits of the marula tree. And that does smell very much like somebody's poured a beer on the road. But now in the drier months of the year, it will smell fairly similar to that of the other herbivores, even though the elephants have got a very varied diet and the zebra only eat grass. It all smells much the same. Okay, well, I think we're going to continue and head off to see what else we can find. Request from Jimelin not too long ago, and she's asked if we could show her where the fireside chat takes place, and we're actually very close by now, Jimelin, and I was on my way to show you before we bumped into that dazzle of zebra. Another one just crossed the road here. Toodaloo. And basically it's in the center of Djuma, really. There's a large open clearing called the quarantine clearings, and it's within the center of this clearing just about that we have chosen to set up our fireside chat spot. It really is a beautiful setting with a great backdrop of the sunset behind us. And we'll be there in just a moment or two. Sun's probably going to set in the next 15 minutes or so, and Pamela's interested to know what time is it getting dark at the moment. It's getting dark at about 6 o'clock in the evening, and that is why we have decided to change the times of the drives. We feel that we're going out a little bit late in the morning now and a little bit early in the afternoon. So as of tomorrow, we will be heading out half an hour later on the sunrise safari and half an hour earlier on the sunrise safari, half an hour earlier on the sunrise safari, and half an hour later on the sunset safari. So make sure you tell all your friends so nobody gets there late or early. So if you look over to the right now, we're driving along the eastern edge of the quarantine clearings, and just going to slow it down a little bit. And basically directly up to the right over there is where the fireside chat spot is, and you can see it from here. So we'll stop and give you a long distance view of it up there. So there are the logs and the stones which mark the fireplace, but this gives you a bit of a different perspective, and it's in a very, very large open clearing. And what I'll do is I'll continue to drive around and get you onto the other side of it to give you the 360 perspective of exactly where we are. I think we're in for a beautiful sunset tonight, so I think that's what I'm going to plan to do, seeing as I can't find too many animals. The sunset is going to be a good option to try and get into a high vantage point for. Now the fireside chat spot's just up to our left, and you'll get an idea of why we've chosen to put it here, because it is perfectly situated to get the glowing sunset in the background, at least for the start of the fireside chat. Okay, so this is where it all happens. These stones are used as markers for the cameraman, for where to set up the camera, and the rest is fairly self-explanatory. And I guess this evening it could be called the sunset chat destination, and it is a very comfortable spot to be sitting in. And now that I've sat down here and looked up to the east, another thing we can begin to look forward to is a full moon, and it's not quite there yet, possibly another 2 or 3 days, and Andrew's probably going to battle to show it to you now because the antenna might be in the way, so I'll just swing the car around and show you. Oh, wrong gear. Sorry, Andrew. Okay. Andrew nearly went flying off the back there. So not quite there yet, but not far off. And it's one of my favorite things to go out when it is full moon, and even tonight I'll probably go and drive around with no lights on, just using the light of the moon. The best animal to find in that scenario is a herd of elephants, and you can sit with them, and because they're so big you can see them fairly clearly. Another thing that I love about driving around under full moon is the shadows that are cast by the trees onto the roads. It makes for a great adventure. And for any of those of you who may have joined the show more recently, only this week, and didn't catch up on the last fireside chat, basically every Sunday for the last half an hour of the safari we will set up around the campfire and show you some highlights, some clips of the week of all the exciting things that have happened, and also just be able to sit down and answer some of your questions that may not be suited to asking whilst on safari, but around the campfire almost everything goes, so you can send through a few different questions that may not be as topical as the ones that get sent through on safari. And another thing you can look forward to is our friend James on the guitar. Brent and I sometimes back him up on vocals, but only if we know the words to the song. So sometimes we just sit there patting our knees, which can be fairly awkward. But it is always wonderful watching him perform, and that is something that you should all look forward to seeing if you have not already. Very talented on the guitar. He actually brought back another one of his tools the other day, and that is an electric guitar, and he hasn't given us a full show with it yet, but who knows, maybe that will be something that will come out in the future. Although an electric guitar around the campfire might scare all the animals off with the big speaker, but we may have to find a special venue for him to do that for you. Okay. There was a male impala chasing one of the females around, and probably for no reason at all. With impala, the rutting season has come and gone. Some of the females may not manage to conceive during that initial major ruts in the months of May, and therefore in June you sometimes get to see a little bit more rutting, the second rut, which allows those females who didn't conceive initially to have a second shot at it. And what that means is we often forget and get pleasantly surprised by seeing an extra small impala lamb with all its slightly bigger cousins. But that is something that we can think about, and really look forward to seeing all the impala lambs. They're incredibly cute. Sadly, they do provide a major source of food for the predators, but they also allow us to see some really cute sightings of them. Okay, well, we're going to rush you back to James. My earpiece pulled out, so you probably would have wanted to be there a little bit sooner. Anyway, over to him, enjoy, and we will see you a bit later.
Hello everybody, sorry to drag you away from Scott. We think we might lose Sindile. He is in, as you can see, quite a lot of bush. I don't know if I can go further than this. I certainly don't know if I'm going to get out of here. Sindile, stop moving. Right, well, that's as far as I can go, everybody. So we'll just have a quick look and see if we lose sight of him. He's definitely on the prowl for something. But I am now in a thicket, the likes of which I don't think I've ever experienced before. While we're sitting here, I just wanted to let you know that we did, and I will show you when Sindile disappears, but we did have a magnificent sighting of some fresh guari flowers that have just popped out as a sign of spring, and I'll show them to you and let you smell them, virtually of course, if this leopard disappears. You can maybe hear the sound of a green wood hoopoe calling in the background, shouting at the leopard, which is now doing what leopards do best, well, second best, they sleep best. That's disappear. Well done, Vian, that's brilliant. Very cool. You can just see him there. Isn't that great? Look up. That's a wonderful example of how camouflaged he is and what a brilliant pelage he has. And you can see a bit of greenery around where we are now. But that greenery belongs almost exclusively now to guari bushes, so things are getting very dry. And while that's not so bad for Sindile, obviously it's difficult for the herbivores. And Tiens in Margate, well, welcome Tiens, from the south coast of Natal in South Africa. You want to know, would we ever feed the animals? Would we ever put down food during dry times? Tiens, in an open system like this, where it's as near to open as we can hope for, 3.5 million hectares, no, we wouldn't feed the animals. I'm afraid we'd just let nature take its sometimes rather difficult course. And here a laughing dove just landed above old Sindile there. Oh, now he's going. he's laying down. Okay, I'm going to attempt one more move forward before we get completely stuck. Wish me luck. While I do that, this is the magic guari bush, and you can see the little white flowers on it, and they have a delicious smell. There goes the leopard. They just sort of smell sweet. A sweet, sort of slightly spicy smell. Lovely. And there, that's brilliant. If you find the leopard on that shot, I'll be most impressed. I think you need to come a little to the right.
It's worth a try. There you go.
You can hear that is a white-browed scrub robin alarm calling at him. I'm going to attempt a little move forward. Might result in us never leaving here again, but for the cause there is no too great a sacrifice. I take that back, we're not going anywhere just yet. Okay, I think rather than wait here and watch us try and dig ourselves out, pop across to Scott. He's got a wonderful sunset, and Via, maybe you just want to show that. No, you can't even see it from there. We'll go across to Scott and show you the sunset, and I will hopefully
And Andrew and I have not moved very far from where you last hurriedly left us, and are enjoying the tranquility that is the African bush as the sun begins to set. I'm really curious to know, when is Shadow eventually going to return to Sindile, or has she potentially already met up with him just without any of our knowing? But I'm sure James has discussed that in depth with you. Hopefully tomorrow Shadow and Sindile will meet up. The Birmingham boys will come back for a visit. Those are my two hopes. Although a wild dog sighting and a cheetah sighting would also go down quite well, I feel. Andrew and I were really disappointed that the hyena den was not active when we went there earlier, because we both haven't spent time with the hyena for a while. Well, happy to hear that we've already warned Sonia about the fireside chats and what to look forward to there. So this night, this Sunday night coming, the last half an hour of the safari will be the fireside chat, where we sit around that campfire that I showed you a bit earlier. And if you've just tuned in before I showed you that, well then tune in again on Sunday and you'll get to see the full show. And while we wait for the sun to dip down, I can answer a question sent through from Charlie and Pamela. And I guess you're also interested in this, Sonia, and a lot of the other viewers. They've asked, have any interesting visitors arrived unannounced at any of the fireside chats? And there certainly have been a few. The most exciting one was probably this time last year, or November last year, during Big Cat Week. What happened was Peter Pretorius and Hayden Turner, two other presenters who you will be meeting again in the coming months, were doing the first fireside chats of the broadcast, and you wouldn't believe what happened. Kunyuma, a young male leopard, walked right into the shot where Hayden was, right behind where Hayden was sitting in front of the fire. Kunyuma was up in a marula tree, probably only 50 meters away, and he climbed up while Hayden was sitting there. So for those of you who are watching, you were lucky enough to cut from Peter, who was following Kunyuma with the spotlights and filming, and then cutting back to Hayden, who was sitting at the campfire with the leopard in the tree behind him. But we have also had a few elephant walking past, not too close, though, no problems with elephants, and one or two hyena sniffing about, but nothing to be concerned about yet. No visits from lion. So that's one that we'll hopefully see in the coming months. But for now, it's mainly been leopard, hyena, and elephants in terms of the dangerous animals that we've seen. Anyway, we must get back to the sunset because it's about to start dipping below the horizon. Can hear quite a few francolins calling. What I'm going to suggest to a lot of you is to tune into the Juma waterhole camera in about an hour or two's time, because the audio at the moment is so crisp and clear because there's not much vegetation which will absorb the noises, and you can hear a host of different owls calling and a lot of the birds around the waterhole. I can hear a woodpecker now drumming, which is actually for communication. It's no longer looking for food. Listen again. Nope, it seems to have gone quiet. Anyway, like I said, tune into the Djuma Waterhole Cam, not to watch, but simply to listen. The noises last night were absolutely wonderful, and I'm sure tonight will be no difference. Got an interesting question through from Joan, also on the topic of birds, and Joan has mentioned that she would like to come out to the Sabi Sands on safari, but she fears that because she's so interested in the ornithology and the birds, that being with other guests, it may not work out well. And would they cater for you, being a strong birder? And it's a tough one, Joan, because as a guide you have to cater for everyone's needs on your vehicle, and usually being a birder you are the odd one out. But there are certain lodges that will offer you the ability to hire a private Land Rover, so only you and whoever you're traveling with will be on that vehicle, but it obviously comes at a cost. And if you do have your own guide, well then it becomes easy. You can tell him exactly what you want to do and how you want to do it, because he is only catering for your needs and not as other guests. And a lot also does depend on which lodge you go to. Some lodges will have a maximum of 6 guests on their vehicles, whereas others may have more and up to 9 or 10. So the more people that you get diluted amongst, the less of your requests, understandably, the guide can only fulfill so much. So, like I said, a private Land Rover or private vehicle is a good option, but it does come at a cost. The other option is to entice enough of your friends and birdwatching pals to come with you on the safari, and if there are enough of you to fill one vehicle, then again you will be able to tell your guide exactly what you want to do. Happy to hear that there's a lot of birders watching this afternoon's show, and James has got back to us. James mentioned that he started his bird list, and I was sure it was October last year, but thanks for confirming that, which was on the first drive when we started broadcasting, and I wasn't even around then. I only arrived at the end of November. And James says that one bird he would like to add to his list of 208 birds is the lesser striped swallow. So that is what I'm going to try and do for you. And as we're about to take Ingwe Alley Road, which is Leopard Road, Ingwe is a leopard, I'm going to send you over to James.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy, who has just extricated us from the midst of a thicket, well, with bush probably more dense than the matter at the heart of a neutron star, but here we are. And there is Sindile, who is lying. He was starting to stalk, and then he just kind of went down in that stalkish slash restful pose. He looks a bit like a house cat at the moment. and I'm going to try and sneak a little bit forward so that we can get a better view of him. He did cross this rather fiendish drainage line, and there, is that any good, Vian?
Not really. Navigating will work.
It'll work. Thank goodness. So you can see how, especially in this light, he is perfectly coloured for his sort of nocturnal hunting activities. Now he's just so much more alert than he was during the heat of the day. And I suspect, you know, like we're going to be out half an hour later tomorrow, I suspect that extra half an hour with him would definitely sort of provide possibly some more time for him to do some hunting, because it'll be a bit darker and a bit cooler. But you can see how if you were walking through here as a duiker or steenbok or bushbuck trying to find your way through the terrifying night, you would have no idea that one of Africa's most efficient hunters was lying here in the shade of a tambuti grove, and well, there are various other gnarled and tied up bushes around here as well. Sindile has now, in typical fashion, gone to sleep. I'm afraid I don't think that I can get any closer to him without creating a major disturbance, either to the workings of Wendy or Sindile's sweet relaxation. You heard something behind us there. So we'll just see if he gets up. Otherwise, we will probably leave him after not too long. Well, we've only got a few minutes left of drive, so we'll probably stay with him to the end and see what he does. And it's this time, you know, it's extended periods with these leopards. So Brent spent, what, 2.5 hours with him this morning. We've spent almost 3 hours with him this afternoon, and Scott spent some time with him a few days ago, and basically there's been somebody with him continuously for the last 7 days, and that's how we truly learn about these animals. A lot of it is spent watching Sleeping Cat, but the rest of the time excuse me, is extremely informative, and we learn things that the books don't tell you about all the time. Especially in special cases like this, where the leopard, he's in an abnormal situation where his mother is off trying to make him some siblings, and he's too young to be going independent in theory. It'll be fascinating to see if he makes it. The first thing that Lex said to me when he came into the sighting was, "Do you think he's finished?" Basically meaning, you know, it's a matter of time until he either starves to death or he's found by some other predator. Now that remains a risk. Let there be no misunderstanding that he, I think, is still in the balance. His life is not going to be easy from here, but at the same time, he's doing much better than I think any of us thought he would after 7 days. Shadow will eventually come back into this area. Whether she will call him or not, I don't know. But if he does find her, he'll tag on with her, and they'll do some hunting together, I would imagine. Or if she hunts, he will certainly try and share the kills with her. So as long as he can hang on for that long, I think he's going to be okay. But he is definitely at risk, and that's going to be the drama that unfolds here in the next little while, is how this young male leopard of about 12 months is able to survive alone. As we've said before, some of the females have gone independent at 8 months, but like their human counterparts, the males are slightly slower developers than the female leopards, and that makes things a bit more difficult for him, especially as he's about to hit puberty. You can hear lots of different bird activity. I'm just going to be quiet for the next 20 seconds and I'll tell you what we can hear. So I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a Coqui francolin calling. There's still some robins in the drainage line. There were some crested francolins and arrow-marked babblers. But as we turned up the audio, so all the birds went silent, became bashful, and stopped calling. We're also at that time of the day that's known as the changing of the guard. And the changing of the guard means that the diurnal animals will stop calling. There'll be a brief silence, brief period, lovely time of the day, around about now. And then the nocturnal animals will start to call. Scops owls in the drainage lines. Excessively noisy francolin. And then of course what we've been hearing a lot lately is the fiery-necked nightjar, which apparently says, "Good Lord, deliver us, good Lord, deliver us." And they call a lot. Maybe the odd giant eagle owl. Boo, 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 boo. Boo, 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 boo. This is the last sessions of the crested francolins calling each other, telling each other where their territories are. There you can hear the babblers. So, lots of sounds going on here, and Sindile hasn't moved in the slightest since we last saw him. He is up and looking around though, and I'm not, just to reiterate, I'm not going to put a light on him. He's probably old enough for us to do that, but because he's been on his own for a while, I don't want to do anything that might jeopardize his chances of catching something to eat as we go into the evening. There's quite a bright moon out tonight. There's no wind, and that's going to make hunting for him pretty difficult. And that's why he'll probably stick. You can hear the babblers there. It's two flocks having a little territorial dispute. And so he's going to stick to the thick bush, I think, tonight, to try and avoid the bright light cast by the moon. Shall we just have a quick look at the moon? If you don't mind, while Sindile does not much at all. It's up there in the sky. There it is. The waxing moon. And you can see that is going to cast a very beautiful dim blue glow over the Lowveld tonight. It's a very warm evening and there's no wind to speak of. So it's going to be pretty difficult for little Sindile to hunt in the open. It actually looks rounder on your screen than it does in real life. Looks almost full on the screen. It is a waxing moon, so I think it'll probably be full in about 2 or 3 days' time. You might just be able to hear the oxpeckers coming home to roost. They'll come to land. You've seen some of the dead trees fact the one that Liam flicked up onto underneath the moon is the kind of tree that an oxpecker will come and snooze in. They nest in tree holes lined with the animal fur that they glean from the animals that hold the ectoparasites and blood that they like to eat. I'll have a show you a last glimpse of lazy Sindile, who gave a great performance this morning, but has been somewhat more, he's acted within himself this morning, this afternoon. There you can hear the oxpecker. I'm sure they've got a little nesting hole in the tree above us. Such a magnificent time of the day. There, the oxpecker actually just went into its nest. You see him there, yeah?
Oh, okay.
He's flown out. As I pointed at him, he flew away. That was the tree in which he was sitting, and that's the kind of tree that's going to have a hole in it, and that's where an oxpecker will take refuge during the darkness. You can see the little hole behind the bark. That's where he came out of. I'm sure he'll come back when we eventually disappear. We're going to go back across to Scott quickly. He's with the buffalo at the Juma Dam Cam, and I believe that buffalo is in a bad way. We'll just go and have a quick look, and we'll stay with Sindile. If he does disappear off into the bush, well, then that's just bad luck for us. But we'll stay with him until the end and see you just now.
Welcome back, everyone. Shame this big old boy is looking worse for wear. This is the same buffalo that some of you alerted us to. He's been here the whole of last night and the whole of today, and this is, I'm guessing, the first time he's moved in close to 24 hours. And you can tell by the way that he is moving, he's not in good shape. He can hardly put one foot in front of the other. It doesn't look like the same individual that had a wounded back leg, even though he's moving very slowly. I think that's because of his general condition, and maybe he's got some illness that's caused him to become so weak, or maybe it's just old age. He would be no match for lion in this state, and I'm sure it'll be either the Inkahumas or the Birmingham coalition that bring him down. We could, however, also be surprised by hyena in a scenario like this. Hyena are very opportunistic and very powerful animals, especially when they team up in clans. And it could even be hyena that bring this guy down. Failing that, they will be first on the scene if and when he does pass. Well, I don't think he's going to recover from this. If summer was around the corner, there would be a chance, and you see some incredible turnarounds from the herbivores who look very, very weak, but hang on just until those first rains, and as soon as the rejuvenation comes, animals that are on the brink can quickly regain health and strength. But I don't think he's going to make it, this guy. And like I said earlier on Drive when we were discussing this, you've always got to remember in these sad moments that the sadness and death of one animal will mean joy and good fortune for another. And it all is part of the circle of life. It has to happen. And we're no different as humans. All of us will one day come to the end of our lives and form back into the food chain, less naturally so than he will. But imagine if, you know, the very hungry pride of lion that haven't managed to make a kill for some time come across this bullet. It would be a huge bonus for them. And Lisa's just sent through a message on Twitter saying this is when human intervention is necessary. Well, Lisa, if he is dying of old age, I'm not sure what more you would like us to do. And it is sad, but this is the way nature has it, and nature must play out till the end. If we were to intervene and even put this animal down and leave it here for hyena to feed on, we would unfairly be aiding the hyena and not helping a pride of lion that may be powerful enough and bold enough to kill this bull before he dies. So if we make any of these small changes, it has a massive ripple effect in terms of what should naturally be going on. So I know it is difficult and it is sad, but it is nature, and it's important to remember the biggest mistake we as humans make is to intervene with nature. The more we leave nature alone, and if we took every single one of us off the planet right now, the world would be a better place for these animals. And we wouldn't be able to help them then, but we certainly all can and surely must agree that the less we intervene, the better. It's not our job to try and decide what happens out here. It's Mother Nature's plan, and like I say, we've just got to obviously feel sorry for that bull. You can't not feel sorry for that animal, but for us to intervene, it wouldn't be the right thing to do. Well, I'm going to say goodbye to all of you, and a big thanks for following on the safari and sending through all your questions and help. We really do appreciate it. Thanks to Andrew on camera and to Kirsty and Nikki in the final control room. Take one quick look at the moon before we send you off to James and Sindile. See you in the morning. And don't forget, we're going out half an hour earlier.
Hello everybody, just in time. Mr. Sindile is on the move, sort of, more than he has been. There he is, beautiful leopard. And the picture that you're seeing on your screens is a lot brighter than it actually is in real life. The camera's doing a pretty good job of sucking the last of the light out of this day. We'll follow him for a little while. Sorry, Liam. Not making Liam's job easy. Although that has quite a lot to do with Sindile. And if he heads into this thicket, I'm afraid that's going to be the end of that. I hope he catches something good to eat today. Many times are perfectly adequate for this stage of his life. can hear the fiery neck nightjar. Stopped now, of course. There he goes. Right, everybody, I'm going to let him go gently into the night. He's given us a spectacular day, and I'm extremely grateful to him. So all that remains for me now to do is to say farewell. It's been a marvellous day. It started off very cloudy and kind of ominous, and eventually it cleared up sometime during the middle of the day, and it turned into a magnificent afternoon, and we spent it with this magnificent leopard. So a big thank you to Mr. Vion on camera. He's done a spectacular job as usual. He's made me laugh with his slightly sardonic wit. In fact, it's not slightly sardonic, it's extremely sardonic. And on the other vehicle, a big thank you to Scott and Andrew. And in the control room, Nikki and Kirsty. Kirsty on the vocals today. First day out on the job, so well done to her. Eugene knocking about somewhere, I'm not sure where exactly, but fixing bits and pieces. And if you didn't know, we had a guest on board today, and that was young Tara Dales, who got out of the office and got some time in the bush to see what we do. So the last thing remains is for me to remind you that tomorrow we start half an hour early. That's 6 o'clock Central African time, and that it will be 12 a.m. Eastern American time, if there is such a thing, but basically on the east coast of America or Canada, you are going to be at 12 a.m. We will start the next safari. Thank you to all of you for your questions and contributions, especially to our young children, I think from various parts of America. Thank you for your questions. We do love to have you on board. So please keep them coming, please keep watching, and I hope that one day you will be able to come out here to this magnificent wilderness. Sindile has melted off into the bush, and so we're going to just follow the camera to where he was, and I'm going to say good night to you, and have a wonderful day, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever you find yourself on our beautiful planet that we call home. Bye bye, and see you tomorrow morning.